Diane Graham. I am here to talk to you today about CORE. CORE is the new name for BANK, or the Bethel Area Nonprofit Collaborative. CORE is a nonprofit organization that unites member organizations and local citizens to cultivate an engaged and thriving community. Through community-wide initiatives, CORE delivers resources, programming, network events, and mentorship opportunities that bring businesses and people together to build a thriving and inspired community.
First of all, thank you, town managers, for providing us dinner. Appreciate that. Thanks so much. So my name's Amy Scott. I'm the director of CORE, and I'm here tonight as your facilitator at this meeting. Everyone should have a stack of handouts at your place, starting with the agenda. And we are going to jump in with an agenda review and to go over our meeting objectives and our meeting agreements. And before we do that, I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay? Is that good? If anyone needs better sound, needs us to speak up, just go like this or something. Indicate, please speak up. I want to make sure that everyone can hear each other. And also, please feel free to get up at any time and get yourself some more food. There's some cookies over there and drinks, and help yourself. Don't be shy about getting up and walking over. So our meeting tonight is focused on these objectives, which are at the top of your agenda. Just going to read through them and make sure that everybody's clear on why we're here to meet together. Vern?
Can we just introduce ourselves?
You want to do that first?
Yes.
Sure.
Whenever you're ready. I didn't know when you were going to do it.
No, let's do it. That's fine. Yeah, we can do that first. So let's just go around the room. Oh, yeah. In between bites.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Southam from Bethel.
Lloyd Sousa, Bethel.
Amy Bernard, Newry, County Shade. Lynn Sparks, Greenwood.
Warren Hilliard, Greenwood.
Laura Flowers, Bethel. Amy Chapman, Greenwood.
Alan Jordan, Greenwood. Steve Whiteman, I'm an outlier from Newry.
Jim Lodges from Newry.
Laurie Swain from Bethel. Michelle Cole from Bethel.
Brett Maxfield, Woodstock.
Ronnie Deegan, down Woodstock. Sean Coffin, Woodstock.
Virgil Tink Cartwright from Newry.
Gary White, Newry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect. So our objectives, the first one is to share the process and information and some of the outcomes from something called the Community Destination Academy and the Summit with all of you. Some of you were there, a few of you were not, so we want to make sure everybody gets up to speed. We're going to discuss some of the priority action items that came out of that process. Excuse me. We are going to arrive at some kind of agreement among the four boards on how to move forward. We'll discuss ways that the four towns can and maybe should work together. And we're going to have arrived at a shared understanding of the support that's available through the Community Destination Academy leadership team going forward. We're going to discuss the role of municipalities in this process and agree on next steps. So any questions or clarifications about the objectives of our 2 hours together? And we're going to eat too and get to know each other.
Who are the people in the back of the room?
Say that again, Steve.
Who are the people in the back of the room?
So we can do introductions over here.
Linda with the Chamber.
Catherine Graham. I work with Amy at CORE and also for Native Active.
Sam Wheeler, Bethel Citizen Newspaper.
Brooks Morton, What TV?
Yep, so we're being recorded.
And we have one more.
What TV? Oh, there you go. I can see you.
Newry.
Great, thank you.
And there's a sign-in sheet if everyone hasn't signed it yet.
It's right here.
Does it need to go around, sign-in sheet? Just pass it around, make sure everybody signs in. So yes, we're being recorded both by What TV and Sam Wheeler also has a recorder going for the recording and for the record. So also on your agenda are a few meeting agreements. These are super basic agreements that we would all like to have on how we're gonna work together tonight while we're here. First one is we're gonna stay on the high road and out of the weeds. With the kind of work that all of you do, it's really easy to very quickly talk about details. And for purposes of meeting these objectives tonight, we need to try to stay out of the super weedy details. They'll come later. They're not gone forever. Today is a starting point. We need to agree that we're not going to solve all of our issues tonight in 2 hours. And one person speaks at a time. We want to make sure that all views are heard, including after tonight. So we are going to be talking about how we will be sure to keep in touch and allow for feedback after. Sometimes you might hear something, learn something. You need a little while to process it. We want to make sure that information and feedback can come in even after tonight. You might not be ready to say what you want to say tonight. There'll be time for that later. So, any questions on those agreements, or do they sound okay? Great. So quickly on the handouts. So you have the agenda. I've included in here the core membership form. I have invited throughout the years, formally through the Bethel Area Nonprofit Collaborative, which is now CORE, invited all of the towns to become a member of the organization. So I wanted to make sure that you have that information in front of you and know that you are invited to join for 2020. This is a little bit more, have a little bit more fleshed out and specific membership benefits now than we did as the Bethel Area Nonprofit Collaborative. The next handout, everyone should have. It has the Heart and Soul logo on top. So I don't think this is new to anyone, but it's pretty important that I wanted to make sure that everybody had this in hand for reference both tonight and going forward. These are the value statements that came out of that four-town and regional process. So this came out of the hundreds of interviews and different kinds of engagements that came in through that process. And this sort of distills what people in your four towns and in the surrounding townships value the most. And the larger Heart and Soul handout is a pretty well updated list of action items that also came out of the Mahoosic Heart and Soul process. And this is just to let you know that there is movement happening on a lot of these action items. And this Community Destination Academy is being very intentional about referencing and incorporating these action items and the value statements in that process in order to build on a lot of work that has already been done and certainly not just start over. So you can look through this at your leisure. If you have questions or comments or feedback about any of these things, the core membership or any of the Heart and Soul work, please feel free to contact me and we can discuss it or answer your questions about this. And again, this is a point in time. This is sort of updated right now. A month from now, 6 months from now, it's going to be, changed again because action will have happened. Some will have been completed. Some will have, evolved into something else. And then you all should have two more handouts, which are going to be part of the presentation in a few minutes. I just want to make sure everybody has two more besides that. Colorful ones. So we'll get to those. You can keep those handy. We'll get to those in a minute. All good? Great. Well, I'm going to turn on this projector and give you Actually, before I do that, let me just see a show of hands. How many people were at the Community Destination Academy Summit a couple weeks ago? Most people, right? A lot of you were. Okay, great. And the 4 town managers also, and some of you also participated in the academy portion of that, which happened back in the fall. It was three full days, and then that summit was just a couple weeks ago, was the sort of public rollout of what happened during that academy. So I'm just going to back up and give a very brief overview of what this process was to make sure everybody's on the same page and understanding what it is and how that ended up prompting this meeting tonight. I'm going to share a little bit of the information that was shared throughout that process, but by no means all of it, because we'd be here till tomorrow. That said, if you want more information or have more questions or want to see more of the data and the details, all of it is available to you. You can just ask your town manager or ask me, and we can share some of that information. So just want to make that clear. This is like the quick overview. So I'll turn this on, hopefully. So the Community Destination Academy was brought to Bethel through a partnership with the Maine Office of Tourism, the Northern Forest Center, the Maine Woods Consortium, and the local partner was the Bethel Chamber. Future IQ is a consulting company that was brought in to help provide a lot of the data and information and to facilitate the whole process. But that's, excuse me, but those are the partners that brought it to this community. It's also been done in Rangeley and I believe in the Moosehead region so far. I think those are the only 3 places in Maine to date. So the whole idea is to provide information on what is impacting tourism, what kind of trends are affecting tourism in our region, and provide that information and then provide a structure for helping the communities to determine what to do with that information going forward. The overall idea of it is to sort of help communities, develop a sustainable tourism and recreation economy. So that's the idea, is to really provide the tools and the information for that sustainability element. So the data, what are the emerging macro drivers, as it says there? The data shows that tourism is going to increase given what's happening globally and where populations are moving and the kinds of stressors that are on people living in cities. So this looks like kind of a gobbledygook picture, but what this is indicating is that most of the world's population is living in urban areas. And as of these numbers are projected for 2050, and the indications are that way more people are living in dense places than in rural places, which puts an increased stress on those rural places. This slide is showing the growth in consumer spending. So you can see the inner circles and each pieces of those pie, each of the pie slices. That's showing 2009 data in trillions. And then the outer ring is projecting a data from 2030, also in trillions. So you can kind of see where in the world people are going to have more expendable income to do things like travel and go visit places. These are just two of many slides and data sets that were shared as part of the whole Destination Academy and some at the summit, simply to paint the picture of what we should anticipate seeing in our future here in this region. The message that we heard was it's happening whether we like it or not, so we can either kind of get ahead of it and anticipate it happening and control how it happens, or not. It's really our own decision as a community. So the question really, does all of this information and all of these data points and these trends mean that there will be increased pressure on an area like ours? And the answer was yes. And so again, it's really just up to the community to decide what to do with that. Another question we were posed with, so is there any such thing as can tourism ever be sustainable? Is it possible to do that? This is an example of a place, the Great Wall of China, where it does not appear to be all that sustainable with the number of people who are visiting one place and putting that much stress and pressure on one place at a time. That's just an example, but that's really the crux of the issue. Can even with increased number of people coming or anticipating that more people coming, can that result in something that is good for this community and actually sustainable? So before I go to the next part, does anyone who has been at any of these pieces want to add anything or clarify anything up to here? Steve?
I'm sure you're going to get to it, but I think it was comforting to know that when the question was asked, or is tourism going to increase? And the answer, as you said, was yes, but it was yes, but there are different ways that you can deal with it. And the suggestion was that one way is to try to bring the same number of people and have them leave more money.
Yep.
And there's ways to do that.
Sure. Good. Okay. So leading up to the summit and then after the summit, which we'll get to that in a minute, but a survey was put out to anyone who'd been a part of this saying, overall, how important do you think tourism is to the future of the Bethel area? And this just shows that pretty much everyone thought it was very important or extremely important. So just sort of proving that locally there is that interest in tourism as a part of the local economy. So back to this concept of sustainable tourism and what does that mean? So this slide is really pulling that apart and defining what do we mean by sustainable tourism. So the first bullet, I can just go ahead and read these, but the first bullet is it's integrated with our local communities in a way that is respectful of our diverse heritage and culture, provides visitors with authentic, place-based educational experiences that leave them feeling enriched and inspired, creates lasting financial and social benefits for local residents, businesses, and communities across our area, is supported by public policies with organizational support and funding, and maintains or contributes to the health and vibrancy of our natural environment. So this is kind of the point, to aim to fulfill this definition in our local area. Again, referring to this survey, people were asked, how important do you think each of those pieces that I just read, each of those bullets is to the Bethel area. So on the left is each of those bullets that I just read. And as you can see, pretty much all of them are rated at 10, which is critically important. People feel about it. So really, just bringing more people or just making more money is not enough. People want to see that the tourism is putting a lot of benefit back into the community, back into people, not just who are visiting, but who actually live here, and that is a viable place to live, to go to school, to work, and to raise a family. So the next another piece of the Destination Academy was to develop some strategic pillars of, how this work is going to happen here. I'm actually going to skip that one. So these 5 pillars are the core elements. Sort of take that definition of sustainable tourism and pull it out into, well, what do we have to do to actually fulfill that? We need to focus on tourism, workforce and housing development, regional collaboration, convening, communication and leadership, which is part of what we're doing here, convening, create community engagement and buy-in, create and refine compelling, unique visitor experiences. That's part of the strategy Steve was referring to, of getting more dollars out of each visitor who comes. And take a green and environmentally responsible approach to the whole thing. Again, coming back to the ensuring that is sustainable to the environment here as well. So for each of these pillars, for those of you who were at the summit, each pillar had a flip chart created that looked like this. So it had the pillar at the top, the description of its importance, and then some of the ideas that came out of the discussions at the Destination Academy. It also had some of the ideas from the Heart and Soul action plan that fit in this category. So they're already up there. Then it had space for people to add their ideas and add what they were thinking. As these were big flip charts like this size on the wall. And each of the 5 areas had their own flip chart. So at the Academy, people went around, reviewed it all, wrote their own ideas. There were lots of handwritten ideas added, to this list. And then after doing that, everybody was given 5 stars and was asked to vote for their top priority actions and ideas. So one of your handouts that looks like this is showing you the top 2 or 3. So for each of these pillars, these are the top 2 or 3 action ideas that got the most stars. So we went around and counted each individual star for each action idea, and these are the top ones that came up. So I'll just give you a minute to look at that so that you get a sense of what did the 100 people who were at the summit have to say about what ideas they think need to be implemented first, their highest priority items. And under regional collaboration, convening, communication, and leadership, you'll see a couple things that relate to the 4 towns. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other stuff in the other pieces. And I think I have a... Well, this is just the same slide that you have in front of you. You can read it better on your paper than on the slide. So, before we go any further, Does anybody have questions, things they want to add, clarifications, and anyone who was part of that process of the academy followed by the summit, that I miss out, leave out anything big that you'd like to point out? Good? Oh, yeah, Ryan?
Looking this over, I thought it was interesting when I take a look at this, and one of your top projects was create affordable housing options, rentals, ownership of both, which is great. But nowhere on this do I see transportation infrastructure to support that from town to town. Sometimes individuals want to go ahead and stay at Newry, Woodstock, or wherever.
Yep.
We need to take a look at expanding that transportation infrastructure.
Yep.
So they can leave the car in the dooryard and know a bus is going to be there to pick them up at a
Right.
certain time.
Right.
Go to the mountain, go where they go, get home.
That will get added to the list if it's not on there already.
One of the
Because
comments-
again, these are the top three, there's a lot more.
One of the comments, I guess, didn't make the list, but was very interesting, was the notion that since most of our weekend guests anyway come from the south, Woodstock is really the gateway to the area. And you should think about how to play with that. and make it work.
Any other comments?
You've already got a corner that slows them down, so.
You hope it's a step down. Cell phone turn.
Yeah. I guess I got a comment.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of looking at the paper and I'm listening, and I hear Bethel and I hear you say other towns. I think this is all great. And I think it should be a little different, you know, like the Mahoosic region, but you got Oxford Hills, 8 towns, 1 community. So, I mean, whatever we move forward and we take back to our towns to sell it, I think you'd find a lot more teamwork and a lot more cohesion amongst everybody if it was different. You know, not saying Bethel ain't great in the Bethel area, but it's 1 out of 4.
Yep.
So you gotta find something that glues the 4 together.
I'm glad you brought that out because I was thinking that it does, as I look at this, so while you're talking about Main Street and obviously Bethel's Main Street, over the years we've continually looked for a term that would say that, you know, and we remember when we were talking about should we be the Mahoosic area or should we be this or should we be that. Finally somebody said, well, here you are, you're in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you're talking to somebody on the street about where you go, what you're going to do for the weekend. You tell them you're going up to Bethel or you're going up to the Mahoosics. At the time, the Mahoosics was not a term, you know. So I know it's hard on the other towns, and I would look for another word for it too. But that's why it keeps coming back to Bethel because it's known.
Well, they have made it work in Oxford Hills. I think you might say we're going to spend the weekend in the Oxford Hills region, and rather than saying we're going to Otisfield or whatever.
I just think for your local support,
No, I agree.
really to have it, if it was, just an example, the Mahoosic region, 4 towns, 1 community, or however you want to word it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to steal a role from Oxford Hills, whatever. I just think it would bolster your local support as you bring this forward into your towns.
Mhm.
Because, you know, if I bring this forward into town and it says Bethel, I know how my town people, and it's not necessarily for the outsiders, it's for the insiders feeling comfortable with it.
Exactly. We need, especially need buy-in, as I said up there. We need one.
Yeah, as someone who's always trying to promote the Bethel Library to the towns that use the Bethel Library, that's definitely something we've run into.
So that's a really good segue, honestly, to the next piece of the agenda, which is to just make sure everybody understands the process going forward. agreement on what we're gonna call the work going forward, is a great thing to call attention to. That's really important. So right now, that team that I mentioned that brought this resource to the community, the Northern Forest Center, Maine Office of Tourism, and that group, they're going to continue supporting this process for a period of time. You know, they can help manage and support this work, along with a local leadership team, which is made up of people who were willing to raise their hand and say, "I'll be on the leadership team." So the town managers are on that team. And some other folks, and that is the group that is going to, for the time being, sort of continue to oversee this process going forward. The idea is that with these projects and these pillars, that there would be some form of organizational working group or action group or something for each of the pillars to keep the development of the work of those projects moving forward, and that the leadership team will help figure out and find the resources to support whatever that is. So whether it be looking for, you know, grant funding or federal funding or whatever to support some of these projects, that's part of what will happen through that team. So it's not like you're just being pushed out and saying good luck. There's some organizations putting resources into this. So there should be some follow-up fairly soon, I think, on what those working groups are going to look like. I don't think they're all going to be the same. I think it was up to the sort of pillar leaders in each of these areas to determine, well, we're going to have a meeting and then we'll figure out if we're forming a committee or what we're doing. So stay tuned for the outcomes there.
And those committees aren't necessarily set in stone now, I mean, others could join, right?
Right. Yep. Yep. So the question, you know, in looking at this under the regional collaboration pillar, one of the top ideas that got the most stars was that the four towns develop 5 to 10 year plan together, covering economic development, infrastructure, which would include transportation infrastructure, I would think, tourism, brand and local needs, etc. There were more things that were in there. So that was one of the ideas that people felt was really important, part of what prompted this meeting. And the rest of our time together is really to explore what this could mean, what things could, in what way could the four boards work together, what value you think there might be in that, and also discussing, you know, if there's agreement that, you know what, there are some pieces here that really we should dig in on together, then we can discuss what is the role of the municipality in certain projects in a process like this. So at this point, I would open it up. If there aren't further questions or clarifications that any of the town managers want to add in from being on that leadership team, thank you for raising your hands. Then we can sort of open it up to discussion. And I just want to add, before we do that, I forgot to mention at the beginning that I have these flip charts up so that we can capture any concerns you might have as we go through this discussion that we're not necessarily going to address tonight. Any other ideas, I can certainly put up the transportation infrastructure idea on the list. Ideas about who else needs to be involved. So these charts are here to capture things that we aren't necessarily going to dive into deeply tonight, but we'll need to at some point. Let's see if I can turn this off. This function is not available because that's the on button. Okay.
Well, I think you've done a good job in summarizing to this point what we've been through. I think you've made it quite clear, at least for me anyway.
Yep.
Could relate to it all the way through. I think you've done a good job. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think tonight could be a very key meeting. At least that's what's going through my mind. We've all, in our own towns, worked alone so long in our own little cubicles that it's going to be hard to try and work together, I think, as towns, but I think we can do it. If we want our area to stay the same, we've got to work together. If we want it to change any, we've got to work together. And I guess that's how I see it. The boards of selectmen are the key people in the areas as far as individual towns and setting the pace for their own towns. And if we can get along and get together, then we can do something. I don't think, it's not going to work if we don't have more than one meeting. I think we've got to set some goals through the leadership team and then bring the full board back together again at some point in a few months after we get our feet under us to see what we're going to do. But it's not going to be easy, but I think it's going to be worth it if we can work together. I think there's a lot we could do. We could work together in a lot of different ways with solid waste and recreation and those type of things instead of going it alone. I know the old main Oxford County thing is I'm going to do it myself and I'm going to be independent and do it. But I think we've got to start to get outside of that mold.
That was the low-hanging fruit that kind of brought us together. I was fascinated. For nearly 50 years I've been saying we have to have some way to recognize the fact that the four towns and the outside unorganized territories are really a region that has great similarity. But we grew up being in competition, with those guys with the other team, and so whatever happened, I always talk about the development of the area from the days gone by being that somebody would build a house on a hill and somebody else would build a house on the next hill, and you could see from one to the other, that must be my neighbor over there. After a while there'd be a road that came between them, and that road came through the valley, and things started growing up around. And we did that. It used to be that East Bethel had nothing to do with Bethel, and I'm sure South Woodstock had nothing to do with Grand Pond, all of that. And we've seen that all over it, but we were first individual houses, then we were neighborhoods scattered, and then we were towns or pieces of towns. But now it looks as though it's economically viable for us to think about how we can not necessarily give up our identity. I don't think that's what we're trying to do, but to look and see if there are ways that we can collaborate for benefit. For instance, we have our roads don't follow the town lines, and somebody in Bethel may have to drive through Greenwood to get to the Bethel dump. Maybe we could drop things off at the Greenwood Woodstock dump if we could agree that it was all, we were all together, we just had two different locations. So things like that, I think, are where we can start out. Okay.
And we do have half a century of being a school district together, so we know that there are ways to make it work.
That's one of the few places that we've worked together through the years is through the school setting.
Exactly.
And I think this is kind of a unique place to start a new group in the school, and we can blossom from there. Had another train of thought that's gone. It'll come back.
So two thoughts for me, and the first is, you're right, so 50 years ago, whenever, 60 years ago when I started talking about it, someone figured out how to get a school district together. So it isn't unprecedented, it certainly can be done. The other thing, if you think about town business and what towns do, we're about infrastructure, right? Roads, fire, police, ambulance, what is it that we as a town deal with? And then, as you said, you can't get from one side of Newry to the other without going through Bethel. So we're connected in a lot of ways.
We're intertwined in many ways.
Yeah, but I would ask people to consider, step back and think about infrastructure. Because this talks about marketing and promotions and brand and, some of that stuff, I don't know that that's town business. That's around the city, that's chamber business. And, and you gather people from all around to make the chamber do that, and towns can certainly support the chamber, but that's what they do. We do, we bury people, we plow roads, we got someplace where the trash has got to go, or recycle has got to go, whatever that's got to be, and we need to educate kids, right? I mean, that's 4 things we got to do.
Yeah, but there's also a social fabric that is right now, and in most of northern New England, has never been the purview of the town, unless it's a big town. So it's all taken up by nonprofits, but we have this, the nonprofits are inefficient as well, because they've all got to have their own
Same thing,
and
right.
their own thing.
Yeah.
So somehow or other, if we could find collaboration among the towns and the businesses and the nonprofits to create a social structure along the built infrastructure.
I think the collaboration piece is huge, and I think we absolutely need to collaborate. The other thing that I think is we need to walk before we run. You know what I mean? So I'm with you. So, if you start thinking about if it's social fabric we want to focus on, great, let's focus on that. If it's roads we want to focus on, let's focus on that. If it's, let's get one thing done, get our arms wrapped around that, feel good about that, and then move to the next. And, who knows what this, 50 years from now, someone's going to be sitting someplace going, well, they figured it out 50 years ago.
Well, we do have a recreation program that's more or less
Yeah,
multi-town, right?
right. Yeah, that's going to go on forever, I think, hasn't it?
Well, no,
It's been pretty recent.
Recent.
That the
Rec. The rec.
yeah the rec the teams are now more regionalized, just because it made more sense. Instead of having 5 kids on the Bethel team, and 5 kids on the Greenwood team, and 5 kids on the Woodstock team, it made sense to put them together and make more teams of more kids so that the games actually work. That was a fairly recent change.
And we do have a rec board that has a representative from each town.
Right.
And Sarah meets with them, I won't say monthly or monthly, pretty much.
yeah, I think
And she does really want us to talk about the rec department and keeping all the
Right,
teams.
it's a piece, right. Yeah, fields and all that sort of stuff, we talk about it all the time.
That goes back to the infrastructure.
Right.
Right.
If I look at the big picture here, if we're going to actually be able to accept the influx of tourism, then we got to start, I believe, with infrastructure first. That's the foundation. So, for instance, how is it that we can go ahead and take a look at, as I say, transportation infrastructure? Do we want more cars on our roads, or it's going to cost us more money to go ahead and actually fix those roads more often and build it in budget? Or do we build an infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, that is a bus infrastructure in the towns that takes some of that load off our roads? The other thing you're looking at is that we can collaborate. Let's take, for instance, fuel. Okay, if we collaborate and save money in fuel, that money you can take a look at things that you want to do to support the tourism. Those are the things that I, as far as setting a bid start looking at, I think the sky's the limit. Pool our resources, bid those resources, save us money, that we can put that money someplace else towards what we want to do with tourism, the infrastructure.
Are we big enough together to impact town fuel needs? If we big enough when we get together, it's going to change the price.
Yeah, the schools.
Well,
yeah, and sometimes it's
right, if I may, we would have to add our gallons up on an average what we actually burn every year, take a look, take at whatever that is, okay, at that time of cost, rack price.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this on the table because my boss is sitting on the other side. Could be a possibility that we throw in our gallons. I burn about 33,000 gallons in a year. That's pretty amounts. To add in, RFP that out, see what we get for bid. And of course, we'd have to take a look whether it's pedal dump or tanker dump. That's nothing in locations. So the answer to your question is, I don't know until we pool our gallons and take a look at that.
It's just a mathematical exercise at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
No, that's okay, and actually, if it's appropriate, we've looked at that in the past. We've actually had times in the past where we've contacted the towns to see if they wanted to get in, and a lot just depends on gallonage and how much you need, full dumps versus pedal dumps and so on, but yeah, I mean, schools, we'd be happy to jump in with that too. Any way that we can support what you're trying to do, I think that's, as Amy mentioned, you did that 50 years ago. We have a school board that's made up of representatives from each one of your towns that work together on a regular basis. So anything we can do to help, absolutely. That's why I'm here tonight.
If we add to that the conversation about the Mountain Explorer and the needs, the workforce needs that have been integrated with the Mountain Explorer, and the amount of fuel that the Mountain Explorers burn as well. I do think that there's been, obviously, we're a regional age-friendly community, right? I mean, we've got 4-town agreement about the age-friendly community initiative, and when you're talking about transportation, that is a huge issue with our seniors, and you know, it really is so integrally linked. You know, transportation for students that don't have cars, transportation for the elderly who either don't have cars or don't want cars, to get the, you know, to get cars off the roads so that we don't have the congestion problems that many other destinations experience. I mean, we do on busy weekends, you know, that's when we actually do have to stop the stop signs for, you know, more than 5 seconds, you know, because there are cars and influx from Massachusetts and New York and everybody else, every place else. And we're gonna see that continue to increase. So that would be a really wonderful thought process about how can we, you know, leads to kind of a sustainability conversation too. You know, investing in vehicles in the future that are more energy efficient and have less emitting, you know, carbon footprint and the whole 9 yards.
It's exciting to see that Woodstock is looking to build this huge solar farm. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we could continue to do and offset energy costs and also offset a lot of carbon along the way.
Should be interesting.
So others who haven't spoken up yet, does anyone want to chime in just generally what you're thinking now in terms of there's probably ways we should be working together, or not sure yet, or just kind of so we get a sense of the room on it. We've heard some comments in favor of where there's going to be some areas that you could really dig into together, but others?
Must be some more, don't tell Amy, low-hanging fruit.
One of the things that I saw and that I think about when I see this group, and one of the reasons I think it's really interesting to work together, is even in these discussions, things have come up that really I hadn't thought about very much. And you know, there's a whole bunch of us from this region and who have all thought a lot about their area and their town, and they've learned a lot. There's a lot of experience and a lot of leadership here. In Bethel, there's only 5 of us, and we have our 5 opinions, and that's what we have. But when you start expanding your group to people, more people who are also leaders in your community from this area, it just brings a lot more ideas, a lot more sort of historical experience in how towns have come up with solutions for things, and I think that's a pretty interesting, exciting way to make improvements for everybody. And it just seems like there's a lot of just experience and knowledge here that could benefit the whole region. It doesn't need to just stay in one town.
I had an interesting comment last Sunday. One woman mentioned, why do you want more people? Have you ever been to the IGA in Bethel on the weekend?
Well, that's true. People tend to feel that they're overrun by the folks on the outside, and yet one of the things that will be interesting to try to encourage people to think about is that we're all in this business together. I mean, whether you work at a hotel or a restaurant or whatever, gas station, or you run a backhoe to big foundations or whatever, you're working to build something, and if it's coordinated, we're building a vacation community. So we're all in it. Everybody gets a piece of the tourist dollar if it works right.
And I think the point that we might not want more people, but they're gonna come anyway, is something that I heard at the summit, that, get ahead of it. If Hannaford, I guess, has looked at putting a big store here and said we don't have the continuous year-round base to support one, but eventually we probably will.
Yeah, I think I would agree. The message was people are going to come whether we want it or not. Do we want to have some control over who to try to get here and what things will be like when they get here? And also, if done right, with all of those bullets that define sustainable tourism, there are benefits back to the community, to the people shopping at the grocery store, using the schools, driving on the roads. There's benefit to the community if done with thought and planning. So that's, I understand that argument, but again, it's happening. Train's coming. What are we going to do about it? How do we take advantage of it? Honestly, how do you take advantage of it in a way that's going to be really helpful to each of these communities? Steve, did we?
Well, just we have the opportunities or the things that we can point at. For instance, Step Falls, which we all knew was a secret place that Aunt Martha would take you to in a sunny summer afternoon, and then all of a sudden it was big and down east and here and there and on the internet and everything, and now there's 55 cars up there on 4th of July and this kind of thing, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want to ruin the place by bringing on more people, and I think if you look at both the Destination Academy work and the Heart and Soul work, you find people saying, we still want a walkable community. We want a nice downtown. We'd like to spruce it up a little bit, have some more variety, but we don't want to blow it out. Get to the point where there's no place to park and nobody wants to come because it's just not what it used to be. The whole idea is to go downtown and be in the post office, whichever post office it is, and see all the people you need to see.
You mentioned Step Falls, but it's not just Step Falls, it's Letteresh, Frenchman's.
Yeah.
And more people that park up there, it creates unsafe places.
Yeah.
And
so that's part of the plan. We have to deal with it.
Had another. Hold on, Steve.
Yeah,
We had a couple comments. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, I was touching on the infrastructure. I really think we all ought to get together again, but I'd like to see numbers. You know what I mean? Like Winter Sand, if you buy in bulk or bid it out, I don't know what anybody else pays. I know what we're paying. We got a pretty good deal. Same thing with paving. If you orchestrated paving all at the same time and put it into one package, would we all get a better deal on paving? But going along with the oil, some of the general things, if we crunch some numbers, I'd like to do that at some meeting. Just bring it all to the table just to see what everybody's paying. It's no secret.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
No, that's good.
Others who haven't shared yet?
A couple comments that I've had was about the creative affordable housing. Great and wonderful idea, we do need it, but their comment was, who's got the land and who's gonna do it? The towns can't afford to do it. People are always looking for tax incentives to come to the towns,
People are always complaining about streets not cleaned up quick enough. But they all gotta remember it all comes down to your tax dollars. It all comes down to the money on timing, when the snow happens, how amount of guys you got to clean them up. And and they don't want their taxes to go up, but they want all this stuff. And that's, that's what you gotta sell to people.
The affordable housing thing, and what I've seen happen a lot recently is that apartments that used to be available for local residents or for people that came here for the winter and worked at the mountain are now, people are realizing they can spruce them up just a little bit more and Airbnb them or rent them by the season for one big lump sum to somebody from Boston that's gonna come up on a few weekends. And there's not an incentive, I don't know what that incentive would be or where it would come from. I mean, we made a decision when we put an apartment in our house that we were gonna rent it to year-round regular people that work here, and we could probably get, half again as much at least if we had decided not to do that, but somebody needs to come up with some way that there's an incentive for that, and I don't know what that is. But, because there are lots and lots of apartments in town, I think, that used to be available that aren't anymore. That's what we saw.
Yes,
We did try to get some folks to the summit who have interest potentially in affordable housing, people who have invested in affordable housing, and so it is really not out of reach. I think it's a matter of sitting down and trying to gather up those folks and some of the employers that need places for their folks to live, and it's been done in other places. That's the thing. A lot of what we've talked about at the summit and at the Destination Academy, we can look at other communities that aren't the exact same as us, but that have had similar problems and have tackled them through a variety of innovative approaches. And that's kind of where we're at, is that it can't just be the business community. I think the municipal leaders have a role in looking at the future and cross the spectrum of needs of people. I think it's an exciting opportunity for us to think in innovative ways together. And that's the whole purpose of, really, that was a huge driver of having the CDA in the first place, is that it provided a platform in which to have these conversations. And having David come from Future IQ, where he has worked with communities around the country and in some cases around the world who have similar problems and challenges as we do. And so, it's just a matter of, I think we've talked about, we're gonna have to walk before we run. And some of this won't be realized for a couple of years or a few years or 5 years or even 10. But the only time to really start is now. And it's really great that you're all together, just even thinking that, maybe there are some wins that you guys can score as towns, some savings that you might be able to realize by working together that you can then invest in other things that you really have, that have been out of your reach.
I think it's going to be exciting. I think this is the first time that all the select boards have sat down together.
I think it's a historic meeting.
It is historic.
So, but before we start talking into, well, how, right? How do we do this? Do we sit down like this once a week for the next 6 months? Before we get into the how. I knew I'd get you giggling. Before we do that, is there anyone who's still feeling like, I don't know if this is such a good idea? or has hesitations that haven't been shared yet, you know, because I think we haven't really gotten into sort of writing up all the challenges. We certainly know there are logistical challenges and the reality of what I just said, you know, how do you start sitting down together, that kind of thing. But are there other challenges or concerns that we haven't heard yet?
So my thought, whenever we get away from a voting body, you and I talked about this with heart and soul, and how do we put some meat to it? How do we, you know, so the possibilities are endless, right? We can do anything, which is great. So what are we gonna do? You know, I think we need to, you know, we could spend the night going around and around talking about what we could do. And great point in the agenda, we're not gonna solve this tonight. But I think what we need to do next is decide, you know, we know all these great things we can do, what are we gonna do? It's not narrowing that list and say what's reasonable, what's not reasonable. We won't walk away tonight going, oh yeah, here's what we're gonna do, we'll have this solved. Back next week, finish up in February. I wish. But I think we really need to focus on, like you said, staying out of the weeds. What are we gonna do? Where we going?
One of the things,
Get everybody in the room, we should use this time.
one of the things that nags at me is just what you said about, you know, well, it looks like it's Bethel centric. That we need to get buy-in from all the people in the towns, and somehow we need to convince people who are still wishing it was 1950 that the world has moved on and we can still have what we have and do what we do, but we can all be the better for it if we work together. But it's a big job, and I think I'm not sure how it happens, but every town is going to have to, you know, put on a positive face and say, boy, this is exciting.
Kat had a comment?
I just want to, I guess, add to what Jim was saying. A way to get buy-in from your communities is to have a concrete project that people agree on, that leadership wants to support, and gives good reasons why it's important to support that. The people who live here love this place. They want to see it in the way that they remember it and protect that for their future generations who they hope will stay here. So if you show the people some ways to maybe make that happen by working together, I mean, you can champion that in your own towns and communities. It's just deciding what that thing will be. That's up to you.
There isn't, for me, sitting here, what's the low-hanging fruit? Something that we can start, something that the people could buy in. I use the analogy that when you walk up to the front door of this high school, and if there's a handprint on that window, it could be the cleanest building in the world. You could eat off the floors, but they'll always remember that handprint on that window. That's the first impression they see when they walk in. So how do we make that first impression for those people? We start collaborating on bidding and buying. Let's see how that goes. They can see that us boards are working together collaboratively to save some money to put someplace else. That's something they can get their teeth into and really understand that. That's low-hanging fruit for me, sitting here.
I don't know if people will see that as much as we would, because we're going to see the numbers, we're going to do that. I think we need to do something that everybody sees. The low-hanging fruit for me, solid waste.
Yeah.
Recycling right now is a mess, right? And it has no value. Where's it going? Nobody wants it, and all that stuff. We all have places we go throw our stuff. And some of us are already doing it together. You know, I mean, but that was something that everybody. You talk about that hamper on the door. Everybody would see that. It's Monday. What bell am I going to? You know,
Right. Two transfer stations, 4 towns, 2 transfer stations, right? So maybe we could have one open 3 days a week and one open 2 days a week. We have a full-time crew, and you can go to either one any day.
Right.
One of them open an evening?
An evening.
Yeah. Right.
They can open before 9 a.m.
But that's one I think affects people. You know, when they I mean, right? God damn it, the trash stinks. I got to get rid of this.
But is there any reason why these two things can't actually be working simultaneously?
No.
Right.
And it's the same infrastructure, it's just a matter of
And
the occasion.
the whole saving piece would come, you know, when you're going to the 2 or 3 people who are going to provide we're going to deal with the pickups and all that sort of stuff. You got all of us, in for a pound, in for a penny. You get us all, you got none. What do you want to do?
I gotta say, he's right, because if you pick one small thing, doesn't matter who you are, everyone complains about the dump. It's, there is, I go to the dump, I hear complaints.
Yeah.
I'm not at the dump, I hear complaints. So, if you're looking for a binding thing, as simple as it may be, I think you hit the nail on the head, because then you stop people, hey, then you could work on, I think an important thing is that model, to build that esprit de corps, that feeling of being. But I like that, because that would lead to that, because now, that's like the simple.
That's step one. It's, the baby steps. And Ronnie, I'm with you. I think the purchasing stuff is a no-brainer. I don't know that together we're big enough to get. But
Be interested to explore that.
it would be very interesting to explore, and if maybe we're not big enough, but all of a sudden us and somebody calls Rumford and says, you want to be in, now we just go that much bigger. You know what I mean? There's
Oh, yeah.
It's not like there's a line that says you can't cross this.
Right, and we can actually sit there and take a look at that. Maybe one shoe doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
Okay? But it'd be nice to go ahead and sit and crunch that and take a look if that shoe does fit all in that category.
I think when you add things like paving to the mix, we're pretty big.
Right. And they want to put their equipment in one place, or they know they can do 20 miles of road instead of 5 here and have to move 20 miles. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it does.
I also want to come back to your point about with some of the cost savings. Then, that's where you can then start to get kind of creative about what would we put that towards. That has to do with these larger ideas. So, right, that's the low-hanging fruit. You can start working on these projects, get some group purchasing, but then if there is savings, what do you do with the money? How does that help? What's to come forward? But in the process of doing that, as 4 towns, you could begin to get that practice of what is this like to work together? How do we make decisions? What is, how does this actually work? And kind of get that success happening, and work out the kinks. So you wouldn't have to decide right away before you start. You could start with the.
Be really great at that tax time. We could say, well, it's because we're working together as 4 towns, we were able to save so much money that we're cutting the taxes this year, or we're not raising the taxes or something.
Or we're putting it towards some really cool thing that everybody's going to benefit from, right? So I just want to point out again on this page again, I think this is great to talk about where can you start. You need a starting point. You got to walk before you run, all that stuff. Totally understand and agree on that. But one of the things that is got a lot of stars and we shouldn't ignore on the paper here is this whole idea of developing a 4-town plan together on what are the ongoing, low-hanging fruit ideas, and what are some possible goals to work towards as a community of, the music region or wherever we end up calling it. And
Amy, you suggested like a comprehensive regional plan? Or a regional comprehensive plan?
that is, yeah.
But I think you want to start by planning the kinds of things we can do together and not really call it comprehensive planning at the first get-go.
Right. What I'm curious about, though, is if there's any appetite for that idea, because it would take the practice of trying some things together first. It would take some research. It would take some resources, to even get there. But is there an appetite for that? And, could you see benefit to putting that out in front of the community, ahead of the rising curve of tourists?
Sam,
And
don't make
potentially
that
people
the
move.
headline
Yeah.
until we work that through.
And I just want to mention, too, that sort of the in-between now and whatever the next time you gather, there's research to do. You can crunched numbers. There may be some stories like Robin was talking about of other communities perhaps that you could just sort of look at to see what kind of success other communities have had. We also could certainly put together some resources on, well, what do regional plans look like anyway? Has anybody done it well? Or, are there any successes of that? And do some research around that too, so that you can kind of understand, the people think it's a good idea. Is it really a good idea? Are there good examples of it? Is it worth exploring? Just so you can begin to be thinking about that. And have some information in front of you to work with instead of just a concept.
I have a question. And maybe it's a question for each of the individual towns. On what basis are you operating now? Like, what is the date of your most recent plan, comprehensive plan? When, comprehensive plans started going out of style, 10, 12 years ago? So I'm just kind of curious, what do you each individually as town managers and boards of selectmen use as your guiding work plan for the coming 1 to 5 years, or is there one? Vern, do you have one?
Yes, our comprehensive plan was done in 2003, so it's pushing 20 years old.
And Nuri?
I think it's about 15.
Yeah, I think it's 2007 or 8.
John Maloney from Babcock did it with us.
Yeah.
Did a really good job, I thought, and we use it. I mean, we have maps, development maps and all that. The UDRO is built off of the comprehensive plan, so it hasn't been re-looked at.
Well, we update the UDRO. We don't update
the comprehensive plan, but my
The
guess
first one
is
was
if we did it, wouldn't, I don't know how much it would change.
It's in 1992 was the first one.
But if you saw it as if you
Yeah.
really saw it through the frame of your town as part of a larger region that's being affected by these outside forces, knowing what we know now, having been through the CDA and the data. Kim, how about Greenwood?
Ours is 2003, just like Vern.
And Bethel?
Is it 2012?
It was first done 1996, 97, and then we had an implementation committee to implement everything in the comprehensive plan, which I think ended around 2003, and I'm not aware of any updates.
So one really, really good thing about the CDA, one of the many really great things, is that those of you who were at the Destination Academy, we had probably 10 interested parties from the state there, from the different departments, DOT, DECD, where any bit of planning that's being done is living, right? Community development block grants and such. Lands for Maine Future was there. So anyway, there were a really great group of people that were watching with tremendous interest what we were doing. And I think that we have earned their respect and their support. And by acting together, in terms of planning for our collective future, I think that we would be surprised at the resources that might be available to us to actually really, relook at ourselves as towns as part of a bigger unit. I know in Woodstock, and because I lived in West Paris for a few years, that there are people that probably live in South Woodstock who hardly ever come to Bethel. If they're not involved in the tourism industry, they're probably doing their work. They probably work in the Oxford Hills or Williston or someplace further south. And so that would be maybe a little bit of an outlier, but generally speaking, even though there are people that live in each of our 4 towns who do work out of town, but we do have a regional economy here that is growing and changing and putting pressures on each of our towns that I think I'm hoping that you agree that it deserves a solid consideration.
I like the thought you threw out, Amy, about if there's anybody here that's really not into it yet, you know, give it some time, because I wasn't going to the Community Destination Academy. I didn't have it in my schedule and my time, and I was strongly encouraged to go. And I'm very glad I went.
You had a good time.
It's been,
You had a good time.
I did. It was very. I discovered that I think way too often we get in our own little rut and work, and nobody else is around. We don't have a vision for the future, and I think I have a little bit more of one now.
So you're not gonna retire afterwards?
Not right now, no.
I'm on Bethel's website. Comprehensive Planning Committee, a statement from 1/15/2015. Assets, values, and character. Bethel is a resilient community which will build on its strong village center, 4 season recreational activities, beautiful natural resources and forests, and an entrepreneur spirit while maintaining its friendly and inclusive rural character. Needs for the future. The town recognizes that the need to expand educational and employment opportunities, affordable housing for service workers, and supportive service choices for seniors while maintaining good public service. That was 5 years ago. It said 2015.
There was a little, and I think, I don't know if you guys were there then, but there was a period of time when there was some action happening to update the plan, but it never finished.
Right.
So, yeah. So that probably came
Must
from
have out of that.
Well, the state stopped putting emphasis on it.
They didn't have any resources.
And resources, there weren't resources.
There were no support. There was no office. There was just went away.
Even the state planning office went away.
Yeah.
So I just want to add in a comment from being a part of the academy and from obviously working with a lot of groups and working in the community for a while now and living in the community as well. Something to pay attention to, obviously, is the fact that there may be lots more people coming to visit, but the reality is that these communities need more people to live here if we want the schools to survive and be viable, which is really what people wanting to move here. One of the things that they'll look at are schools, and then of course maintain that viability for people who already live here. That's something that needs to be paid attention to. That school age population trends right now aren't great for here, even as lots of people, more cars are on the road and more, the stress on the infrastructure is increasing. So again, it's the opportunity to think about how to use that increased numbers of people coming to benefit things that are for the community, like the schools and the people living here or choosing to live here.
Well, I have an inside source on the school board. And I don't mean this to be negative at all, but the schools deal with that. That some of the schools deal with the population stuff, and some of it they're dealing with it. How do they grow the student body? And that's something for them to deal with. I think the idea of the comprehensive plan, I think it's awesome. But even read a statement that she read. Okay, what's that mean? Like, what's the? And what I would encourage this group to do is find something that's really definable. It's this bottle that's in front of me, and everybody goes, oh yeah, I know what that is. Yep, I know exactly what they're doing. So I think that if we're going to move forward as 4 towns, we need something that's really concrete to get it fit. And then it might sound counterintuitive, but I think that gets the ball rolling. And then we can step back and go, what do we really want to do? With a couple of things, if we had a purchasing agreement, if we had a blanket we were doing together, and the school, and don't forget we're already doing the school, then I think we could go a step further back and go to the resources, like you're saying, and say, hey, state of Maine, help us. Look at this community. We're a model. We are in front of people. Help us get to the next step. Help us really, we're already better than the rest, but help us be really better than the rest, and let's suck the rest along with us. I just would really encourage us to do something very concrete, not feels good, we'll get there, it's gonna take 5 years. And I, forgive my impatience, but I don't expect it done tonight. Next week it's fine.
I don't think
But Jim, I just want to say I wasn't saying that point to say let's address that only and that's
Right.
the only thing, that's all we're going to do. The point is that's another argument for all of this work. That's another argument for starting with the concrete thing, because the school board can't do it alone either.
Correct.
They can't provide affordable housing and places for people to live and roads
Right,
and
that's not their role. Yeah.
they can focus on the quality of the
Quality
education, but
education.
that's not the only thing that's going to get people to move here and stay. So yeah, it's another argument for it. So it's another argument for what you're saying, which is walk before we run.
And
get
another
started.
thing is, what do people have here for jobs?
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, how many of our own kids don't live around because there's nothing for them to do? I mean, that's, how do we get industry to come in here and make that happen?
Yep. So
I don't know.
that's another of the sort of larger. Can we work toward this over time? And in this, in a 4-town regional plan type of situation, we could focus on how to get some more help in the world of economic development, because there are resources out there, but they're not built into your infrastructure right now. It's the kind of thing to aspire towards and work towards and try to get some help on that, because that's an excellent point.
You have some people working around the edges that we really don't see here, and maybe we should have Mike Wilson come up sometime to one of these meetings and talk to us about Maine West and the efforts that are going on there. You've all been visited by Mia Purcell, who's trying to convince folks that what we really need to bring young families to the area, to spark up the area, fill the schools and everything else, is broadband. And I know that every town has said, well, yeah, it's a nice thing, but we don't really need it. We don't need a smart house like those people in Massachusetts or anything. And everybody can get emails, so that's good. But really, what will bring people here is the recreation, the lifestyle, the surroundings that we have. And they can work somewhere else. They can work in Baltimore or St. Louis or somewhere while sitting in their house in the Moosics, So
Or
there's
the
a lot of
Gem
information
Forest.
coming out of the state these days that is
Yep.
really leading to that. There's something they're talking about raising bonds to be able to bring money around for rural broadband. So I think that's something we need to learn more about. And I know Mia's been kind of discouraged that she's gone to all of your towns, and everybody has said, it sounds like money, we don't really have it. But it looks like there's going to be a chance to get some help with that. So we should think about getting on. Kim is the real hero on that. You got broadband forced on you, and you found use for it, right? She has the fastest line between the town office and the fire department of any town in the state. But yeah, I really think that may well come, and we want to be able to be accepting of it. Because it's one of the things that will happen. In fact, you talk about industry there. Sure, we need some more light industry, but this being able to function in the city format but not have to live in the city is a big deal.
Again, that's the infrastructure for the businesses, manufacturing. They take one look, oh, you do have broadband? Okay, let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
If you don't,
right.
The data proves that, yeah, and it also proves the age group that is looking to live in places like this and work remotely.
Yeah, when I went to a few of those broadband meetings a couple of years ago, there were 2 or 3 people there at least who said, I have a vacation home here, I would love to make it my real home. I'd love to put my kids in the schools up here if I could work remotely. I'd be 5 days up here and 2 days back in Massachusetts, or maybe I would just ditch Massachusetts. But, definitely people who already have a connection here that would spend more time here, more resources here, put their kids in school.
And the reality is that the people who have that advantage don't understand not having it. They think it's like air and water. It's got it. You have to have it. So they come up here and the real estate agents aren't even concerned. It's not even on their paperwork. And so the people that buy from Massachusetts are kind of surprised when they get here and one step up from dial-up.
It was like 20 years ago when there was no cell service in the Sunday Valley, right?
Right.
What do you mean?
That's so sketchy in spots.
Amy, you had a comment, and then I want to suggest a next step.
Yeah, I wanna get to there.
Okay, go for it.
So as a manager, administrator, I would really like to hear collectively from everybody, hey, here's some projects I want you guys to all collectively work together, and we'll get back and discuss them at a future meeting, whether it's, regionalizing trash, which we've been talking about for 4 years, or it's, joint purchasing, and I think that's a great idea. Every other community I've ever worked in is doing that and has been doing that for a decade or more. So, and they capitalize on the school, paper. Think about how much paper they're using at this school, and we could be purchasing at the same rate and we're not. Think about the heating oil, think about gasoline or diesel. If we had the school get a tank and everybody came here to get their diesel and we were buying at a rack rate, we'd be saving a lot of money. So there are ways for us to do this, and I think that it's great that we're having a conversation, but before we leave here, I want to know that, hey, you want Loretta, Kim, Amy, and Vern to work on these, come back with some numbers in 4 months, and we can talk about, getting into either an interlocal agreement about it or just a purchasing agreement or something so that we have something concrete to go back to. I know trash makes total sense because it impacts everybody. You screw around with their trash and it is not pretty. So,
and the fact that we're already working in pairs at least makes it
absolutely, and I'm sure we could drag Hanover along with us.
I think so.
Yeah, and I've been saying since I got here, why aren't we open 5 days a week and having it open so that, hey, I have trash at my house and I want to get rid of it today.
I don't open a can of worms, but we really should include Albany and Mason and Gilead, because they have to travel so far to get rid of this. Gilead has their own home.
Do they have transportation?
I think they have.
Yeah, they do.
And at least one evening.
We've had that conversation so
Trash isn't. So do we have to get involved with the county more than that? Are those run by the county?
Yeah. So they have to go out.
They said
Route 5, it's on.
Right, but does the county run the transfer station for them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah, the county's like the town manager for a nice town.
Yeah.
Albany's with water.
Except for the school and the state.
Yeah.
I mean, they get a long haul. I mean,
So,
that's what we call it.
do we want to follow Amy's suggestions in terms of get some things for the managers, and they can reach out for support too from others on our team here, but to dig into, start researching, and look ahead to how many months out to maybe come back together again and evaluate together and begin figuring out how to move forward on some of those first concrete steps.
Sounds like we've got 2 things already between the solid waste and the opportunity to buy.
I'm excited. I can almost touch it and feel it, Yes.
That water bottle, man.
On a new spreadsheet.
Excel spreadsheet. You got it. Oh,
He does.
Yeah, there you go.
with gridlock.
Oh, absolutely.
So what about the, say, oil and sand and all that stuff? Is that something you guys would like to work on?
I think the town managers, whatever your title is, come together, sit down. They can draw from, we know what we burn, we know what we use. Pull that together in a spreadsheet by town, take a look at what it is in the gallons, okay? I can talk to David, make sure, on the school district side, throw our hat in the till. I'll let him know the conversation and run that past him, and we can throw that in. It'd be interesting to see what that data, raw data comes out as, and then what we can do with it. I'm a data-driven guy.
There you go.
I am.
Other items too besides fuel, there was talk of paving, paper, other materials, sand.
I think that's, the town managers come together and make that list. They all know what we do. I don't want to micromanage them as selectmen. Come together, make your list. They may ask us, what do you think, Ronnie and Sean, whatever, but.
We set ourselves up for more work, didn't we?
You said you were excited.
I got another administrator on board.
So when should we meet again?
Well, we haven't talked about solid waste yet.
Well, I think that,
That's part of it.
I guess, maybe we should take a minute and whiteboard the method they're gonna do it, but give them.
Yeah.
So we've talked about solid waste, we've talked about, purchasing together. What else do we wanna put on the list? I guess back to my initial comments, thinking infrastructure wise, what else do we wanna ask the managers to look at for us?
So we'll start with purchasing first, and we'll go to solid waste, is that okay?
I think they're purchase first.
Fuel, whether or not it's number 2 or diesel. It could be anything from motor oil. Where do you buy motor oil from? Gallons, bulk delivery, those things. Hot top. That was something we looked at or would think about. Paving.
Winter sand,
Winter sand.
Salt.
We're all buying our salt
Well, the
throughout
salt, we have
COG,
to get the
right?
salt
We
throughout
get our-
COG.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I don't think
So
we're
I think,
not gonna
yeah,
beat
you're right.
that.
It is what it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It pays for your COG membership.
I will tell you something we're really different from, and that's tires. And I'd love to put my prices against whatever you're buying. It would be interesting to see that. 1122 fives, whatever your size is, we ought to take a look at how different tires.
I know what that size is.
You wait long enough, you will know. Don't ask, and you will know.
I have no idea.
Maybe office supplies, I don't know how that's gonna actually work.
Does everybody have public work?
20 years.
Yes.
But I hear you, but at least you're looking.
Everybody like Gary does?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't follow that.
I almost wonder if, I think there's some select persons that
We don't
have,
have.
this is the first time they're hearing any of this stuff. And it's a lot, it's a lot to digest. And I'm not sure if the boards as individual boards have talked about it, after, even going to the summit or the Destination Academy, and been able to digest it, see where they can, what they think they can bring to the table, what area they can help with, how they can prioritize in their community to be stronger as we come together. I just don't know how other people feel about that. It's just, it's a lot to take in. And there are some low hanging fruit that we could start with, but I don't know how fast we crawl right now before meeting individually and coming back.
So my suggestion would be to go through this, meet again in say 3 months maybe. I know there's a lot of meetings coming up for certain things in some other towns, but so maybe about 3 months or so ish, and take that time. This doesn't commit you to anything at this point except saying we were going to look at the numbers. And use that time in between now and the next meeting to gather the data, of course. The next meeting will be about evaluating it and analyzing it. But at the same time, in that interim, that would be time for each of your boards individually to do some of that digesting, do some of that talking, look through some of the materials. And also the leadership team, or maybe I should just say I speak for myself and maybe others will help me, but I'd be happy to pull up some of those other possible resources going forward just so we begin to have them on hand, and perhaps even some of the other stories or how have other regions done this to just prompt the how-to as a possibility. And so then when you meet again, when you come back together, you can begin to analyze the data, and you'll be that much further ahead in your thinking and processing about what now, and at what pace. That would be my suggestion, and I don't know if that speaks to your concern or answers it, if it gives enough time to kind of deal with that.
Works for me. I mean, I can even come back soon and we can crunch this data.
Well, yeah.
Whoa.
So I think what we're allowing time for, though, in the interim, in between, is the combination of the gathering the data and that kind of thing.
And
But
the
also what Michelle was talking about, that time to meet as individual boards and just kind of process all this stuff, take it in, talk about it amongst yourselves before reconvening.
So my understanding would be the main category would be purchasing and solid waste.
Solid waste. So Amy's all over solid waste.
The contract's up this June. Our contract, yeah. Ours is up what, September? Yeah.
Time you could.
Yeah.
So what's the homework on solid waste?
So I was to choose homework. The Chi-Town, the interlocal agreement, the copy that we have expired in 2005. So we would look to, this is just me, look to upgrade that interlocal agreement. Look where there have been rubbing points. Is everybody defining construction waste the same way? Is everybody, defining things the same way? Kind of look it over to see if there's any rubbing points. And then also there is the solid waste, there is the agreement that we have for the actual removal and disposal of it that we need to look at. That's just me speaking.
And then there's the question, I guess after you did that, you talked about whether or not we could come together to be able to use either of the facilities.
Exactly.
Collaborate the facilities and time, scheduling.
And interesting that you mentioned that it's a tri-town, because Hanover is involved in the Bethel movie.
Right, I mean, then it can go from there. I mean, we just signed a fire agreement with Woodstock, for Woodstock.
Mutual aid.
Well, more than mutual aid, they're the first responder. So once we have the basic down, then we can try to do some of those things.
So instead of driving your fire trucks through Woodstock to get to the other end of Bethel, Woodstock would be the first responder?
Which helps people with their
I
insurance.
think that already happened, so.
They did it, we just did it for insurance purposes.
The insurance companies wanted to know that was the case, so it makes the people's homeowners insurance go down who live out there.
But it shows a way we could work together on some of the border fringe
Yeah.
in town.
So is that a third item? Fire protection?
It sounds like it's under control.
It sounded like it's already done.
We had all
We've
this
already
stuff.
moved
Oh,
it.
it's not-
Fire
it's
done
not-
in Bethel. It's done in Bethel, Woodstock.
So I think we're putting that right back over there.
It doesn't have fire.
There's mutual aid
Yeah.
among all.
The same thing with Greenwood. And it's along
So
River
let's-
Street, so.
Let's all come back together again. Is mutual aid something that needs to go on the list for some of?
Not now.
Not right now. Okay. So do we want to actually look at scheduling a time so we get it on the books to come back together with the agenda, reviewing this stuff, hearing back from each town what you've sort of hashed out yourself with your own board members, and other ideas you may have had.
And I'd recommend that everybody take a look at the heart and soul list and see if there's anything on that strikes you as something that could be worked on together.
So what, so at the end of January, so February, March, April, late April? Do we want to actually look at the calendar dates?
Might well have something to shoot for.
Exactly.
What's a good number here?
The
Last week?
last week in April.
Last full week is the 20th.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh, 22nd or 29th are Wednesdays if we're sticking with Wednesdays.
Messes up my date. Don't do the 15th, everybody will be depressed.
Yeah.
When's school vacation? Or does
Oh,
that
that's
matter?
probably the 20th to 25th.
Easter is the 12th.
Oh, yeah. 29th? 29th?
It's a fifth Wednesday. Nobody ever has a meeting scheduled on the fifth
Oh,
Wednesday.
that's true. It's a big- right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going once, going twice, April 29th, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah. You already know that?
Well, I should.
You should.
Does that date work for all of you? You want to get it on the calendar? Okay, so April 29th.
All those in favor, say aye.
Presumably, we're gonna ask if we can be here, right?
So can,
Yeah, well, yes, he did. There was a lot of witnesses sitting at this table. And it's even recorded.
Can one of the town managers just, can we do it? Before? Yep. And just so you all know, I'm not available that night, but someone else could facilitate if you want to make sure you have a facilitator. Lined up to do
What's the
that.
point?
We'll work it out.
Will there be a synopsis written up that could be sent out to, like, say, David, so he can see
Yes,
what we finally
so
decided?
there's a combination of minutes.
Yeah, so we have staff here to do minutes just because we want minutes. And we'll email them out to everyone so you can have copies of the minutes too.
And then what I can do also is I could pull out of that and my scratches to a synopsis that's a little bit, not the full minutes, but just a synopsis of where things arrived tonight. I'm happy to do that. So, any other final comments? Because I think we can wrap up.
I just want to say thank you, everybody. This was really nice. It really was. A lot of different ideas and opinions. It's good.